Hello.
Hello.
Hey, what's up?
What's going on, Vaush?
Not much. Just, playing Bloodborne, appreciating the wonderful fruits of cultural diversity. Bloodborne was, of course, made by a Japanese studio. I thought prescient that we'd have this conversation now. So, how you doing?
I've been all right, Vaush. I've been all right. Playing some video games, eh?
Yeah. Not well, but we're playing them.
Right on, right on. I play some video games too. I've been to Doom 2016 and Doom Eternal. Excellent games. Very alpha.
Very alpha. Yeah.
Yes,
All
yes.
right.
There's no hint or trace of any SJW bullshit in those games, just for the audience's sake.
What do you have on your mind? You gave me quite a topic list over email. I don't know how much of this we're going to be able to cover.
Well, yeah, we could start, I guess, with race realism and see where it develops from there.
Yeah, sure. Hit me up. Or should I give an opening statement?
Well, I think I'm fairly familiar with where you stand. So I don't mind taking the lead on this one if that's okay.
Go right ahead.
Okay, so I do think race is obviously real, and I think there's utility in understanding race. It's a biological reality as opposed to just like looking at it as a social construct. We can make predictions based on race. We can run experiments to show that race is real, and there is very much utility in understanding race in applicable situations in real life scenarios. Some examples of utility, say for instance, like victim or witness reports in identifying perpetrators. Obviously, race is very helpful, right? You can narrow down the population. So that's an example of utility. Forensic anthropologists can determine one's race and basically help identify the perpetrator just by looking at the bodies, or the victim by looking at the bodies, etc. They could determine this by looking at the bones or the DNA.
Right.
We can look
So
at.
Do you mind if I hold you
just
here?
one more example, and
Okay,
then I'll pass it over to you. Just one more example. There's a very interesting example that I saw in a TV show. I think it's called This Is Us. My girlfriend was watching it a little while back, and there's adoptive parents of a black kid, and some black parents approached the white woman and said, you don't know how to do black hair. And I thought this was a very interesting example of race realism, because of course black hair is different than white hair, and if you're not knowledgeable of racial differences, then you're not as equipped as a parent to be a good parent. And I thought this was very proper of the black family to approach the white family and tell them of this.
Yeah, okay. So nobody is arguing that there aren't phenotypical differences between people of different races. I mean, what makes black people black? Usually their skin's a little darker than mine, huh? Nobody's arguing with that. Like, we know black people don't get sunburned as easily, different hair, so on and so on. The reason why race is a social construct isn't because there are absolutely no physiological differences whatsoever that humans are grouped into. It's because the lines that we draw to distinguish those groups are totally, totally arbitrary, which is the reason why biologists don't use race when they're trying to understand human genealogy or the way in which the human genome has evolved and spread throughout our species. They don't, because to them, race is useless. What they look at is clines. They look at a sort of a like an intersection of a bunch of different genealogical conditions that overlap and intersect, and there are slight variances that sometimes correlate to racial divisions, but oftentimes do not. And there are plenty of piece of evidence to show that as well. The fact that, for example, the difference between the genetics of a random person in Africa to another random person in Africa are greater than that between a random African person and a random European person in America. Like, there's so much variance that doesn't really get encapsulated by the racial groups as we understand it. But, like, let's be real here. When people talk race realism, we're not talking about black people having, like, frizzy hair or whatever. We're usually talking about intelligence. That's usually what people banther around about. And as far as I can tell, there is absolutely no biological evidence, nor any which sort of makes any intuitive sense, to indicate that there would be any genetic differences between the races with regards to intelligence or processing capabilities.
Okay, well, you said a lot there, and I don't know exactly where to start. Intuitively, this is where I want to begin. Simply because you acknowledge that ethnicity is real, it seems to be that you're just diminishing or mitigating the value in race. Now, I understand that ethnic variance is different. Ethnic variance is real within the various races, right? Like there is a difference between, say, an Irishman, a German. There's a difference between a Nigerian and somebody from the Congo, etc. Right? These are real differences, but seem to just diminish or dismiss the fact that there is a racial category. We can group certain ethnicities under a racial category, and then we can draw utility from that. There's usefulness in understanding people in these different categories. For instance, Black Americans. We don't really need to understand the ethnic origins. We just need to understand the racial component in order to draw certain predictions or to make certain observations. So, do
There's
you disagree
utility
with
in these
that?
things because people believe there's importance to them. I mean, we're not suggesting, I don't know if you've noticed, lefties still use the terms black and white. I mean, it's not like we're ignoring the fact that there are social groups that have been sort of calcified by
No.
hundreds of
Like
years.
what I was saying specifically with, like, say, victim and witness reports, right?
Well, you could say a
You don't
person
need
has
to
dark
know the
skin. Like,
ethnicity. You could simply say it was a Black African, and the dark skin wouldn't necessarily give you the information because, of course, there could be a Hispanic fellow or a Middle Eastern or a very dark Indian fellow, and that would give you a very different description. So we can just simply understand race on a colloquial level. We don't need to understand the ethnicity involved or even the scientific information. We can just understand
right,
race,
but
and
what
there
you're
is utility
arguing is
within
for the
that.
social construct. Because what we may just call a black person here in America, if you went over to Africa and you got mugged and you were like, yeah, it was a black guy, that doesn't mean anything to them because there are 47 different types of black guys. The point that
Well,
I'm
because
making isn't
everybody's
that there
black
aren't
there.
differences between people. It's just the lines that we draw are arbitrary. You could very easily distinguish between, like, for example, what about black Hispanic people? There are black people in Brazil. They're considered black, but they're also considered Hispanic. At what line does that stop? Why is Obama
That's an
considered black
interesting
even though he's
point.
half black, half white? The point is, again, we're not arguing that there are no
I would love to
physiological
address that,
differences.
though.
It's just that the
I would
lines we
actually.
draw are arbitrary.
Well, they're not. It's kind of like when we
They're
mix the
not?
color spectrum, right? No. Well, there's certain points where I could guess you could say there's a gray area, no pun intended. But let me just further
Where
explain.
does green end and blue
Scientists.
begin? I mean,
Exactly. And scientists are very interested in that. When we look at certain colors, say for instance turquoise, you can say that this is very hard to determine if it's green or if it's blue. Where does it actually fit in? Yet we know, Vaush, that green and blue exist. So simply because you can point
but
to that
we
to that
know the
perfectly middle
physiological
area where it starts
differences.
to get blurry, you now throw the baby out with the
No, we
bathwater.
know
Sorry, baby with the
physiological
bathwater, and you say
differences.
green and blue don't exist simply because turquoise
No, we're not
exists.
saying, hold on. We're not saying green and blue don't exist. We're saying that the line between them, the line which distinguishes them, is one you have to decide on arbitrarily. We're not, again, like what, I feel
There
like you're
is some
attacking a strawman
point
here.
where
Have
there's
you ever met a
subjective
lefty who
level.
said there are no physiological differences whatsoever between any racial groups?
You're dismissing the point here. I don't want to get away from this example. You're not necessarily saying there's no such thing as green and blue. What you would be saying is that there's no utility in understanding green and blue because there are these arbitrary lines, because there's this gray area. Now we can't possibly decipher a white person from a black person simply because there's mixing.
Yes, we
That is
can. Wait, hold
ludicrous.
on.
That's
Wait,
like
hold
mixing
on.
colors and saying you can't determine the original origins.
Wait, hold on. Again, I'm struggling to understand the relevance of this. So, if your argument isn't attacking a straw man that lefties don't believe there are any physiological differences between people at all, I'm not entirely sure what it is we're talking about here. If your
I'm
argument is
talking
that the
about
social
utility.
construct of race provides us some utility, then I would argue, sure, it does. I think it also provides a lot of negative utility, but there are scant instances where being able to snap identify people by racial groups provides us a lot of value. A lot of that is because we already identify people by racial groups, meaning that since we've already embedded these concepts into the collective consciousness, it's easier for us to draw upon them. It's like a stereotype bank that we can pull from, which is sometimes useful, but I think it does a lot of social harm too, you know?
Well, I'm very glad that you admit that there is utility in understanding race. And I think it's very important in highlighting this because if you can make predictions based on something, if you can find usefulness in understanding something, then it is scientific. And of course, you can describe anything as a social construct. For Christ's sakes, a couch is a social construct, but it is a very real thing in reality as well. So I hope you're not trying to play that card like,
No,
well,
this
just
is wait.
everything's
So
a social
what you're doing right
construct.
now is an enormous Mott and Bailey. So we already know that there are physiological differences between people, and we already know that everyone agrees there are some instances where it's useful to refer to traditionally oriented racial groups. I mean, everyone does
Great.
this.
That's if
Right. Okay, but that's
no,
not
no. There's
race.
actually
Wait,
quite.
that's hold on.
You,
Wait,
you would
wait.
you
Stop,
would
stop,
be
stop.
surprised.
That's
Okay,
not
sure,
race
sure.
realism, though. What you're describing is the position held by everyone on Earth. Race realism
No.
is the idea that there are concrete and objective differences between the races, and often it leads to the idea that there are like intellectual differences as well. It's not just like dark skin, light skin. It's like there are cultural and behavioral differences that are inherent to the racial groups, which
So
is
right
not
now,
true.
what you're trying. Yeah. So right now, what you're trying to do is say, well, listen, there are some, frivolous, kind of trivial aspects to race realism that, yes, of course, any fool would acknowledge. But then you, in the same breath, say there are no concrete, objective differences between these two. So of course, you have to rewind that one back.
There
is
can't be
concrete,
because there are no
objective
concrete
differences.
there are no concrete objective racial barriers, so there can't be concrete.
Now we're
objective
back to the
differences.
Racial barriers. There are racial barriers.
Wait, are
You're
there
going to
objective? Wait,
point
hold
to
on.
the points in which.
What
Okay.
is the objective racial line between a black and a white person? Is Obama white or black?
Okay, exactly. Now, so you've pointed to turquoise and said, "Is this green or blue?"
Wait, answer
and
the
just
question.
because you can do that,
Wait,
it
answer
doesn't
the
mean that there
question.
isn't white or black.
And
I would
answer
say
the
he's a
question.
mix of the two.
We're not arguing again. We're not arguing that there's not white or black. I'm saying that
I
there
think
are
you
no
actually are,
objective
because why else would you
divisions.
be?
Wait, hold on. I
If
need you to
there's
follow
no-
through with me here.
if there's-
Wait, I need you. Hold on, stop, because this is going to go on for 40 minutes, and we're not going to arrive at any conclusions. Please listen.
If
okay.
there's no,
Wait,
but
stop.
I'm going to say
Wait,
the
please,
same thing.
my friend. I beg of you, my fellow white, maybe I don't know. Please, okay. Everybody knows that different racial groups have some differences to them. Obviously, we can see that in skin color, okay? But that does not mean that these groups are crafted in an objective way. We know they're not because biologists don't use race. It's a worthless construct to them. They use clients because that's a way better way of describing human genealogical variance. There are black people who are incredibly genetically similar to me, and there are white people who are very genetically dissimilar to me. So none of these lines are going to be objective. None of them can be objective. If you want to argue that there are differences between racial groups, I agree. But if we're arguing now, like, is it race realism to believe black people have darker skin than white people? I don't know. If that's the case, I guess I subscribe to that belief. But let's focus on the important elements of this discussion.
You're saying two
here.
different things in the same breath, and I really don't know if you realize you're saying that.
What I say
in one
that's
breath, you're
contradictory?
saying that there is no significant lines or no real lines to determine one race from another, but then you also admit that there are objective, distinct features in which we could recognize.
There are white people with darker
these.
skin than black people. You know that, right? There are tan
Okay,
white
but that
people.
wouldn't be racial categorization because the races has so much more to do than just the complexion of your skin. You know this, Vaush. You're playing dumb right now.
I'm going to say this again, just so you know, okay? The fact that there are black and white people who are more genetically similar to one another than a white person is to another white person or a black person is to another black person means that by definition, like deductively, that any lines we draw trying to objectively determine racial groups are going to fail. It will always be a subjective, muddy social characteristic. Like that follows naturally from the fact that there are black and white people closer to each other genetically than there are white people to white people or black people to black people. There is social utility, but that doesn't speak to reality. Social utility is itself a social construct. So let's get past this largely semantic argument. Do you think there are inherent cultural, behavioral, or racial differences between the racial groups as you see them? Because I think that's what most people mean when they talk about race realism, you know?
There are physical differences between the groups that can be observed in large numbers. They're not going to be observed in every single individual case. There are differences in terms of cognitive performance or mental output, again, which can be observed by looking at large numbers, not just individuals. So obviously, you can have a very intelligent Black person and a very unintelligent Asian person, etc. Right? But
Do
in
you have any
large
evidence that
numbers,
those differences are inherent?
do I have evidence that the differences are inherent?
I mean, of
Well,
course, Africa's average
don't.
IQ is going to be lower. You see what we did to that continent for a few hundred years? I mean, obviously, they're going to be behind with education.
What I find very interesting, Vaush, is that virtually everybody in the world, like you said, will acknowledge that there are physical differences between the races.
You're making an
However,
intuitive argument.
what they fit.
You're walking into a
regardless if I
trap, just
am
so
or
you know.
not,
You
it's a
can finish
very
the
interesting.
sentence, but yeah.
It's fine if I don't trap you or not, but it's very interesting that people will agree that yes, physical differences can be explained by genes, but mental differences, IQ, well, that has nothing to do with genes. That has
Okay.
nothing to do with biology.
All right, I warned you. So now we're going to talk about your IQ. Let me see if you can understand this. So let's say we're talking about early man, early humans. I don't know, 100,000, whatever, so many years ago, okay? Our genes change because of evolution. Evolution acts on us with regard to how effectively we can survive and reproduce in given environments. How well and how significantly do you think the sun affects the genes which affect our skin color? How direct of a relationship do you think there is between spending thousands of years living in Africa and developing a lot of, dark skin versus spending your years in Scandinavia? Like, do you think that might be a very direct relationship?
Well, evolution requires the interplaying between genetics and the environment. So, of course, that's going to have a significant impact.
Right. And same with eye shapes and nose shapes. These are external physical features. They're usually controlled by a select number of genes. They're very directly responsive to the environment. Can have to do with how hot it is, regulating body temperature, water intake, how much water evaporates through your nose, whether you want dust in your eyes. These things are directly related to your environment. Now, your
Right.
brain is the most complicated piece of biological machinery in existence, as far as we know. Its behavior and its intelligence is determined by a fuck ton of genetic information, which is not directly susceptible to environmental influences because it's inside of a skull, which is inside of skin. It doesn't feel the sun, it doesn't feel the wind or the dust, it doesn't evaporate. It's your brain. And whether you're in Africa or Scandinavia, all humans were doing the same damn thing, forming close-knit tribal societies, hunting and gathering, developing agriculture, building tools to make their lives easier. The brain is the same, the world round. Skin color, nose shape, this stuff, very easy to change, influence, give it a few thousand years, you'll get some variance. The brain, however, there is no evidence whatsoever that the human brain meaningfully differs in any of its cognitive abilities from any racial group around the world. We all have the same
I'll
brain.
explain to you how it does. There's no such thing as, say, for instance, a Black athletic gene. We can't find the gene that is specifically responsible for why Blacks run faster. It's a combination of genes
Black
that
people
are
don't run
more
faster.
predominant. Let me finish, Vaush. I let you talk. Black people have a higher prevalence of certain genes that are going to be conducive to athletic performance. The same thing can be said about IQ. There are certain gene combinations which are conducive to high IQ output. Now, genes are not equally distributed among the different racial groups. This is why when we observe different racial groups isolated from each other, we see tremendous civilization and technological expansion coming from the East, tremendous amounts
Okay,
of
so what we're
of
doing is we're
great
doing the
wealth coming
intuitive
from
argument again.
Europe
You
and not
sidestepped.
coming from Africa.
So you
And that
sidestepped.
would
Wait,
be-
hold on. You sidestepped the question again.
I'm not
Well, you did. I
sidestepping at
noticed.
all,
I
my
went in
friend.
that whole thing, and you didn't actually have an answer for me. So just to clear up some misconceptions on your part, Black people don't run faster. The majority of Olympic sprint medals are held by people who come from Western Nigeria. It's a very specific cluster of people who tend to overperform with regards to that. It's not Black people in
No,
general.
you're
Second of all, the kinds of genes that affect athletic performance are going to be directly susceptible to your environment, obviously. How fast you have to run to chase an animal, for example, 10,000 years ago. Again, your brain does not see those kinds of pressures. You would need to demonstrate that in Africa, there was some kind of evolutionary selection that led to a different evolutionary path for the way our brain's genes developed.
My
This has
God,
been the
Vash,
subject
I
of
can't
scientific
believe
study.
this is so hard for you to understand.
Wait, hold on, wait, I'm
when
not-
you're
wait,
when
hold
you're
on.
living in a hunter. Oh, sorry, I
Hold on.
thought you were done there.
Yeah, I wasn't. So you can't just rely on intuition, which is what you just did again. It's a very childlike argument that you people tend to use. Well, look, in Asia they did big buildings, and in Europe they did big buildings, but in Africa they didn't do big buildings. Funnily, you're the one demonstrating a low IQ there. I don't really have the time to explain how societies are shaped by their environments to you, but you need evidence, and this is, by the way, something people have been looking for centuries and haven't found, that there was an evolutionary divergence in the brain development of Africans relative to other populations. And it would have had to have happened recently because, as far as we can tell, genetic information between Europeans and Africans was co-mixed as recently, broadly, as 12,000 years ago. So we're talking 12,000 years for provable and substantive genetic alteration to human brains, the most complex biological machine we've ever found. Do you have any evidence of that? Or is it just like, they lived in mud huts, like, you know?
Well, you accuse me of simply relying on intuitive reasoning. There's no problem with framing a certain subject or topic with intuitive reasoning. And we don't need to rely on hardcore genetic data in order to derive some sort of truth or arrive at some sort of
intuition. It's an intuitive argument.
Understanding of the world. We can use human, you do realize that, looking into microscopes is somewhat of a recent thing. For thousands of years, philosophers relied on their brains, not necessarily these scientific tools to lay things out, right?
This is a long spiel to go on to say you don't have any evidence to support your claim.
Well, I mean, I'm not going to just address the final thing you say in a long spiel. I'm not going to allow you to just pivot to a certain area.
I'm not pivoting. Wait, I addressed the central issue. I explained why there aren't brain differences between Africans and Europeans.
Oh, look at China did things.
Data.
In Europe, and Europeans did things and Africans didn't. In terms of facts, I don't know if you want to call it data. If we look at pre-colonialism, before there was any interaction between the two, there was vast differences in how these people created civilizations for themselves or ways of life. Now, I can explain to you why this is the case, because a hunter-gatherer society requires different traits in the individuals in order for them to be successful. So say, for instance, you're in a hunter-gatherer society. What are the prevalent traits that you need to have in order to be successful? You have to be able to run fast. You have to be physically dominant. You have to be very much in the now. You're not planning any sort of agricultural work. You're not necessarily cooperating with another community. You would just be
any evidence of this?
And this explains why there is difference
what you're doing,
in
what
physical
this is called
intellectual
conjecture, okay?
output.
What you're thinking right now.
Data, and I'm giving you a different type of argument which you don't like.
So what you're thinking, the type of argument, I don't know how to respond to conjecture. So what you're doing right now is you're saying, I don't have any evidence of the idea that within the past 10,000 years there were significant genealogical differences between the ways our brains developed and African brains developed, our being European, I'm of European ancestry. I don't have any evidence of that, even though scientists have been looking for it for ages. I mean, they've been looking as hard as they can for it. It's been the subject of a great deal of scientific scrutiny. But I do know that there were big buildings in Europe and not big buildings in Africa. So I'm just going to run with that. And then through conjecture, I'm going to arrive at the conclusion that that means there's some brain differences. Well, I have an alternative explanation.
How would one measure one group's performance versus another, or their capability, etc.? What do they have at their disposal? They would test them. They would see what these groups do when left
IQ
isolated.
Is affected by environmental
if you're an alien, think of yourself as an alien, Vaush. You have no care about humanity. You're just this kind of scientific robotic type of alien running an experiment on humans like we do with mice. That's how they would look at this. They would look at, okay, let's test these people. Let's test a group from here, test a group from there. Let's look at their history. Let's look at what Europeans did isolated from Africans. Let's try to imagine why these Africans
do you think that IQ
differently.
Tests,
I wonder.
Do you think
it's because
IQ
they were hunter-gatherer? You're always interrupting me, and you're laying out ad hominems.
Okay,
and this
again,
is a classic sign
please.
that you're not
Every
so
time
well
I let you
debate.
talk, you bring up 3 new modes of conjecture. Just do you think that IQ tests test inherent intelligence?
Absolutely.
Okay, then you're laughably wrong. No, they don't. If that was the case, why do people perform higher on IQ tests when they're educated? If we're just trying to
Because
test
you
base
can,
intelligence, then why would it be influenced by environmental factors?
Vosh, there's a level of malleability. Okay, so let me give you an example.
Wait, then
If you're
it's not
born,
inherent intelligence. It's level of education.
no, that plays a role, but you cannot throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Wait,
Let
hold
me
on. It's
explain
not
to you.
about baby out with the
No,
bathwater.
I want to address what you're saying,
Wait, no,
Vaush.
we're
I
not.
want to
Wait, we're not done on this.
specifically address what you're
Please,
saying,
wait,
and I
please don't
can
make me
do
mute
it.
you. We can't keep running around in circles. This will literally
Fine.
take hours and we'll never learn anything. Okay. IQ tests, not only have IQ scores risen on average in America over the past 100 years, but the racial IQ gap has closed significantly. Now it's down to like 8 points. It was like 15, 20 years ago. It's closing rapidly. IQ is a pretty strong measure of education plus some underlying genetic characteristics, but we don't
Absolutely.
know how much it does. Just any test is a test of education plus underlying educational characteristics. Every test
Right,
ever
so-
made is influenced by IQ to some extent. But IQ tests...
I get every single aspect of this point. You're not illuminating anything new to me here.
Well,
I
then
get what
the
you're
fact
saying.
that
Now,
you
please
said
let me
IQ
respond.
tests reveal an inherent intelligence means you're laughably undereducated on this subject.
Well, let me try to explain, because that's the point of a debate. Obviously, you're going to find every white nationalist laughable, disgusting, etc. The point
No,
of a
just
debate is
dumb.
to flesh out these ideas. And okay, whatever, Vaush, whatever. If you take, for instance, an individual who has poor genes in terms of being conducive to athletic performance, they have narrow shoulders, they're 5'6", etc. Now, they're going to have a very, very hard time excelling in sports. But with the proper coaching, they can exceed in sports. Now, they're not going to make it to the NBA, mind you, because the shortest person in the NBA is 5'9". So there are limitations in terms of physical output, regardless of the nourishment or environmental factors. Same thing with IQ. You can take somebody who has a raw IQ, let's say, of 90, and you can bump them up to maybe 110, Vaush. But there are certain individuals that can never become Albert Einstein. I would even admit for myself, no matter what you did for me as a child, there are certain limitations within my brain that would prevent me from being Albert Einstein.
So wait,
that doesn't
again,
mean
you're
I can't
doing
be
the
an
Mott and
amazing
Bailey thing
musician.
again. You're arguing that there are intelligence differences between humans, which we know, we all agree. The question was, do IQ tests measure inherent intelligence? And if there are differences in IQ point values of 10, 15, 20, 30 points based on education, then no, they don't. They measure something. They measure maybe to an extent genetic intelligence.
Just because education has something to do with it doesn't mean the raw components of the brain.
So I don't know how to explain this to you, but if a test's answers are, if you're trying to determine an inherent characteristic, but environmental influences can lead to massive point swings, it's not testing the inherent characteristic.
Oh, I didn't realize that you were being that anal about the inherent. What I mean by inherent is that intelligence is inherent. It comes from our parents in a way. Not
I know
every single
intelligence is
aspect
inherent.
of it.
If it wasn't,
so
you wouldn't be struggling so much.
When you take an IQ test, it is testing for, you could say, your
so let me ask you a
or
question.
whatever.
Let me ask you a question then, okay?
If you really thought that that's what I was thinking, that
let's
you
take
an IQ test.
Let's take Ireland,
on,
okay? Ireland, you know, a lovely country. There should only be one of them. Back in the 1940s, I believe.
I don't want to pivot, Vaush. Do you
this
think
is
any
not a
brain is
pivot.
capable
Hold
of
on,
being
this isn't a
Einstein?
pivot. I'm trying to help you understand.
Is capable of being Einstein? Because if you do, then you're consistent with saying that it's all education. But if you agree that certain people cannot become that intelligent, then you must concede that genetics plays a role in IQ.
Wait, are you listening to me? When on earth
just
have I ever
to that
said,
point and we can move on.
When have I ever said
to the point,
genetics don't play a role? I've never said, I think I've said the opposite multiple times in this conversation.
No, you've tried to say that it's education.
I've said, hold on, wait, wait, you actually don't know what we're talking about right now. Please, so let me clarify,
no,
okay?
Vaush, I'm completely confused.
Point have I said genetics don't play an influence in intelligence. I've said the opposite, actually, if you were listening. What I said was IQ tests don't measure inherent intelligence. Those are two different statements. So I want to ask you about the Irish. It's not a pivot. It's directly relevant. So back in, I think, the 1940s, an author and a scientist measured the average IQ of Irishmen, you know? And it was like in the 70s. It was pretty low. And when that research was published, it was used as part of a broader argument that the British were genetically superior to the Irish, that they were a better people, and that the Irish deserved their subservience, blah-de-blah, you know, the Troubles, Good Friday, etc., etc. However, using the same methodology as the original test back in the 1990s, it was found that Ireland's average IQ had skyrocketed up to approximately equal to what the average British IQ was. So what do you think happened between X and Y?
I believe that if you change the environment, you can change the biology because that's the way evolution works. So that's what was happening there.
Well, wait, they weren't changing the biology. They were just changing the responses on the IQ test. But yeah, the environment improved. So back
when the environment improves, the IQ goes up because there's this interplay between genetics and the environment.
Right. So back 80 years ago, they weren't very patient. They just took a look at the largely undereducated, Irish population, and they said, this IQ difference just must be because they're less intelligent. But then they got proven wrong a little while later. So now you know where I'm leading you with this. What about Africa? Don't you think you're doing the same thing? We know for a fact that the average degree of educational attainment in America is leagues above what it is in Africa. And not, by the way, not just education. There are a bunch of other factors that play into performance in an IQ test, and I have evidence on this too. We're talking home life. We're talking environmental stability. We're talking fear of crime.
You don't even necessarily have to go into I already agree with your point.
Right.
Your point, I totally agree with you, but I'm going to kind of pull a Vaush here and say I've never once said that there is no such thing as a malleability factor in terms of one's intelligence. You can greatly improve an individual or a group's intelligence through education, just like you can greatly improve people with, very shitty statures in terms of getting them to be better athletes. With great coaching, you can produce a good athlete, even if they have shitty genes.
So how do you know that any of the IQ differences in the world right now are inherent?
Well, I wouldn't necessarily be able to determine on every single case the
general,
level of
why do these averages differ?
and the level of the environment. That's like, nature versus nurture is a very interesting question for, all scientists and philosophers, right? To ask me in every single or any circumstance to specifically say the degree to which either one plays a role, that's impossible. But I can say in terms of like,
how do you have evidence that there's any inherent difference between racial groups on average?
Because they perform differently in groups.
So did the Irish. So did the Irish and the British.
I'll give you an example, Vaush. Canada has never had slavery, right? We don't have a history of segregation or any of these things. Well, let me finish the point.
I'm just going to Google while you're saying this.
We literally
Canada
had an
racial
underground
income
railroad.
gap.
Nothing compared to the U.S., yet we still have the same IQ gap and the same problem with crime. The environmental conditions are vastly different in that they are better suited for blacks in Canada, yet we see the same problem. This is why I'm a white nationalist, because I see the same thing happening in all white countries.
The fact that you think that life is easier for black people in Canada tells me everything I need to know about your victim complex.
In comparison to blacks in America, Vaush.
I thought you meant in comparison to... Wait,
of course you're gonna.
There was slavery in Canada. Why'd you say otherwise?
No, there actually wasn't, Vaush. Do your research.
We had an underground railroad system. A Wikipedia article entitled "Slavery in Canada."
Maybe this one colony in Nova Scotia or something. You're going to point to this one come on, Canada does not have the systemic racism problem or slavery or segregation or anything that America went through.
Then it had less.
We don't have a racial problem in Canada. If you come up to Canada and you ask people, is there this huge racial tension? No, they perform poorly because mostly
you're running. We're running 80 miles away from the goalpost. We need to chill. So don't say there was no slavery in Canada when I can Google, did Canada have slaves, and get a yes answer. Just say there was less.
Let's see what you're looking at. Because I've had people pull up similar things, and it's like this like colony that supported or something like that. Like
less slavery than America.
It wasn't national. It wasn't like the entire east of Canada had slaves.
That's cool. Slavery wasn't in all of America either. It was mostly...
Well, it was in the entire South, and it was largely like, come on.
So wait, again. So wait, please. Hold on. Wait, stop, please. Oh my God, we're never going to get anywhere with this. So again, don't say there was no slavery in Canada if there was slavery in Canada.
But let's see the extent to which. How many slaves?
Just Google slavery in Canada. I'm not going to educate you in your own country. It's
Canada.
Canada. I don't care. I don't care. It's Canada. I don't care. I don't care. It's Canada. I don't care. It's not America. It's Canada.
I don't care.
Okay, right. Exactly.
I'm a worldly
anyway,
political commentator, but it's Canada. 40 million people to the north, but I don't care. It's Canada.
Please don't make me mute you. We moved so far off that earlier point. Okay, so again, I asked you, how do you know that there are any inherent intelligence differences between the races? You said, oh, well, one group performs poor. I pointed out the Irish, and then you started talking about Canada. So even here in America, and I can only speak to America because I'm an American, the racial IQ difference between black and white people has been collapsing massively with time, which supports my argument. Unless you think black people are evolving to have big throbbing brains, or white people have been drinking too much lead water or something, that seems to be an environmental change. But even in the current state of affairs, the average income gap, the exposure to social stigma of crime, and a bunch of other psychological factors that are associated with being the victims of oppression, these also lead to negative effects on one's performance in an IQ test. That's not just here in America for black people, that's everyone everywhere. Anytime you see an oppressed group within a given society, there's a decent chance that they're going to be subject to some conditional factors that lead to them underperforming on those tests. So given the fact that we're now down to an 8-point gap with a bunch of systemic problems unaddressed, I feel like the environmentalist argument is growing stronger and stronger every day. The idea that, yeah, there really was no difference in our brains, it's just a matter of making sure we're all treated equally.
Right. Well, here's the thing, Vaush. I've never said that there is no aspect of malleability in terms of intelligence, both on an individual and a group level. We can do things as society to elevate a certain group. Whether or not that's our responsibility is a completely different question. So the first task is to prove that one group is genetically different. Then the second part of the debate becomes whether or not
is genetically different to every other
our
individual.
obligation to raise this group up. And so I would say, yes, if we pour endless amounts of resources into trying to elevate the black community, maybe after X amount of years, we do change the genetics. And
do you know how any of this works? You can't change genetics in a couple of generations. You do understand that, right? You keep using that term. It doesn't mean what you think it means. The genetics are the DNA code written on the proteins in your cells alter in tiny, indiscernible ways from generation to generation in a way that makes you more likely to reproduce. Evolution is not going to be affected by...
Actually, it does happen within a very short period of time. But I can point to the North Korean and the South Koreans and their height differential and their IQ levels.
That's not...
Wait, hold on.
That's not genetics.
Two groups. Yes,
that's not your genes. Hold on. Sorry, that is genetics.
No. Sorry, you got to listen to me here.
That's not evolution.
Because of environmental differences that occurred in North and South Korea.
That's not evolution. That's genetics.
Biological. Dude, it's the same thing.
It's not. Wait, aren't you supposed to be from the superior white race?
In this specific context, it is, and you need to concede
Hold on.
to this point.
I'm sorry. I have to ask you. If you have two brothers, they're twin brothers, and one of them you feed a bunch when they grow up, and the other one you starve, and the starved one ends up shorter, did you evolve that other brother to be shorter? Is that what you would say there?
What I would say, if we did this, okay, I'm going to answer your question 100%. If we do this in large numbers, you're affecting the genetics.
Do I evolve when I work out because my muscles are getting bigger?
Listen, yes, you actually do, Vaush.
That's not what evolution means.
See, I didn't want to say yes to that because I knew you would say that. But obviously, we can change our genetics based on the things that we do within our lifetime.
That's not what evolution means. These characteristics won't be passed down to children.
Dude, in order for macroevolution to occur, you need to have successions of microevolution, meaning within any given lifetime, there are micro changes happening in the organism. Now, of course, from one father to son, it's going to be very minor. Of course, but we can observe, say, for instance, in North Korea and South Korea, if you were to mate with the average North Korean, I could predict your kids are going to be shorter than if you mated with a South Korean, simply because of my understanding of race, genetics, and how the environment affects biology.
Evolution.
This, again,
if you're referring to epigenetic changes, that's not evolution.
It is a form of evolution because if you keep it on that track, you eventually get hobbits and giants, Vaush.
Hold on, wait.
How did we get chihuahuas and Dobermans? Through constantly micro forms of evolution, taking the smallest.
That doesn't mean every genetic change to an individual is evolution.
You get a macroevolution with microevolution.
Okay, wait, hold on. I feel like I'm being irresponsible platforming this low IQ of an argument. Chat, I really don't want to go over this, but please Google epigenetics and Google evolution, and we can be done with this subject. Why am I discussing race and IQ with a person who doesn't know what the word evolution means? Do you have, hold on. Do we have a topic you're more educated on that you want to talk about? like white
We
nationalism
could
or
switch the
whatever?
topics. I'm quite glad to do that. I mean, I don't mind shifting gears if you want to just shift gears.
Okay,
We could talk about
please go
why
ahead.
white secession benefits everybody.
Okay, can we talk about in America? Can we just talk about America
Yes,
specifically?
sure.
Okay, so
Sure.
white
I know it's
secession.
uncomfortable for you to get out of your border and comfort zone there, but
True.
whatever. We can talk specifically about America.
Okay, so
Yeah, I
white
think it would
secession. Do you
benefit.
mean all white people leave America? Leave
No, I
America?
don't. No, no, that's not what I mean.
What do you mean?
I mean the white nationalists that you hate.
Wait, so what do you mean? Tell me what changes you would make to society.
Let's say, for instance, we take a homogeneously white state that nobody really gives a crap about, like say West Virginia. I don't want to be anchored down to West Virginia. I'm using this as a very knee-jerky kind of answer to a question. I want to give you something here. Say, for instance, West Virginia were to separate from the greater whole of America, and it welcomed everybody from Richard Spencer to, you know, Eric Stryker, all the people that you would probably hate and their followers, and you just remove them from the whole cultural, political, and social equation of America.
They can
They get
already
out of
move
your
there.
hair. Well, let's just say it detaches. So now, you know, West Virginia has no role in American politics.
that happen?
You know, there's no. Well, I'm just saying, in theory, would this not make everybody happier if all of these people that you despise and who despise you were to just move to some, you know, irrelevant state and just
Yeah,
separate from America?
Then we could just
Now you get rid of
you.
all the boogeyman white supremacists. The white supremacists get away from
Secession
you.
isn't legal. We would just invade you. A lot of you would die. We would retake the territory.
You're making an argument based on practical application. I'm talking about in theory. Would this
So
not,
in theory, so wait, let's
be,
leave America. What if you all move to like Garbage Island or something? I'd be okay with that. You know, like the big
No,
swirling island of the plastic out in the Pacific.
West Virginia is an economic net drain on America, and I know you're a utilitarian, so you know you could see value in kind of disposing of this 98.5% white state that is overtly Republican, and they're going to welcome all the other people you hate, and they're going to have no military or significant economic or cultural power, and that's all they want. They just want to be left alone in little old West Virginia. Do you have a problem with that in theory?
Why does it have to be an American state? I'm not giving up one of the 50 states. I want 51. I want 52 states actually. I want
because you're
DC
well, that would kind of be like this, like an imperialist kind of mentality. Like if that makes everybody happier, who cares about the number of states, Vaush?
You can't secede from the union. It's not legal.
I'm not talking about whether you can or you can't. I'm talking about in theory, would this make people happier? Let's say it could.
I think that the majority of the population of West Virginia probably wouldn't appreciate being cut off from all the federal assistance they get from our government. I have a feeling that
You're
actually
not
probably
answering what you personally would favor, and the points you're making, like you know, they're good points. I appreciate them, but they're not telling me what you personally would like or would see as being conducive to creating a happier environment for the average American. As far as I see it, the left hates us. They want us out of their businesses. They want us out of their political system. And if they could just somehow migrate to a state in which they could secede from, how is this a problem for you?
Just to get rid of external variables, what if the Grand Wizard of the Ku Klux Klan used their magic powers to raise an enormous island off the west coast of the United States, and you all could move there? Does that work? Can we? It's an island with infrastructure. Let's just get it out of the states.
When creating theoretical scenarios, I think it's appropriate to apply some sort of level of reasonability. It is far more realistic for, say, for instance, West Virginia to secede than magical wizards to raise islands out of the ocean.
They're both about equally likely. Okay, fine. West Virginia.
No, you don't, and that was a ridiculous statement to make.
Let's say A, secession is legal. B, West Virginia secedes and makes itself a white nationalist paradise.
Again, don't anchor me down to West Virginia. There could be a better theoretical
Wyoming,
state.
I don't care, just a state. Okay. And then all the people who already live there are okay with this, except for the 8% of West Virginia who are non-white. Are we killing them? What happens to them?
No, absolutely not. They would receive no punishment. There'd be no penalties, nothing against them. It would just simply be the playing out of time to watch them get assimilated into the greater whole, even if they're minorities. I would not suggest for deportation. I think most would leave willingly once it was decided, hey, this is going to be a white ethnozone. I don't really think we're going to get too many Jamals or Shanikas wanting to stick around, but we would never force them out, and we would never.
People? Why do you have to think off the top of your head?
That was a joke, Vaush. Come on.
What's the joke? What's the joke?
Jamal and Shaniqua.
It
I
just
mean, it's like
it just
talking
sounds
about
like the sort
if
of
you're
thing,
talking
like you
about
thinking off the
a
top of your
girl
head, like
from
what's a
Texas and you
black
said
name I
Terry
could use,
Lynn,
you know?
I wouldn't get all bent out of shape if you said Terry Lynn from South Dakota or so. Whatever.
I
Like,
wouldn't say
sorry, man.
Terry Lynn from South
It
Dakota.
was a distasteful joke. Sorry, South Dakota, whatever. Um, I've heard you make some pretty. You actually were in a debate with Destiny once, and you said, "I see you being polite to white nationalists all the time. Why do you do this?" You're essentially mad at him because he was giving white nationalists a platform and speaking to them respectfully. The very thing that you're trying to do
Wait,
now.
what? Wait. What are we talking? Wait, we're talking about. Wait, hold on. Wait, weren't we talking about a white ethnostate? What are we talking about right now? First of all, I don't think I've been polite to you. My apologies.
You took exception to me bringing up a joke saying, "Oh, that's in bad taste, poor you, or bad you." But I've literally heard you tell Destiny you should not speak to white nationalists with respect.
No,
They're
wait,
not
hold on.
worthy
I have
of it.
never. No. I think if I
Yeah,
don't even remember
dude,
what you're talking about, but I think I was saying
probably
that
don't.
he
But I'm
tends to be
telling
more.
you that
Stop.
happened.
Hold on. This is so out of left field.
Stop.
I think that he was more antagonistic to like lefties he talks to than white nationalists because he gets super triggered by lefties, which is true, by the way. He does get super triggered by lefties.
Yes, that was the conversation. In that conversation,
Yeah.
you
So wait, what does that have
said,
to do with what we're talking
you
about?
made the point that you shouldn't speak to us with respect. We're not worthy of respect.
Sure.
So I bring this up because you're basically accusing me of being nasty, disrespectful, distasteful for making a joke.
I was just saying you were
Meanwhile,
being.
you say
hold on, wait. This is so out of left field. I was just saying I was weird champing.
It is out of left field, and you shouldn't have taken the opportunity to
Are you okay?
sidetrack it with the whole shit.
I can tell you spend a lot of time online because the idea of somebody like looking at you funny after you make a joke that you'd see on poll sends you into like a fucking epileptic shock over here. Holy shit, you're losing it. Just move on with the white nationalist ethnostate thing. So let's say we have
I'm quite sure not anybody even in your chat would say I'm losing it, Vaush.
Well, I guess we'll just have to see based on chat reactions. So anyway, just white ethnostate. We have it now. We did it. It's West Virginia. It's a white ethnostate. So why do we do it? Why?
Why did we do it? Well, I mean, do you want me to explain to you why whites want to be in a white homogenous state of their own and why people like you don't want us around? I think it's quite obvious.
Well, first of all,
I mean,
the vast majority of white people don't want that. I know.
But I'm not asking for the mass majority of white. I would realistically be expecting maybe 0.5% of the white population to actually go along with this.
Say some white people, because otherwise it makes it sound like you think the entirety of white America is going to flee
I made
to
it
West
clear
Virginia.
from the get-go in this portion of the conversation. You said all white people? No, I said some. And no, you didn't ask me to clarify how many.
Said white people.
And I said some. You said, well, okay. Now,
okay.
Again, this
so
is
some, so a small
dude.
sliver of white people. Okay, so the racist white people, they move over there. Okay, why do they want to be away? What's wrong? Keep in mind, if you go over to West Virginia, you'd be forgoing. If you go over to West Virginia, you'd be forgoing everything in America. I mean, everything. All the way we fund roads, highway programs, the money that West Virginia gets. You would be an isolated state, landlocked. I mean, we're talking about accepting a significant decrease in the best of times to your standard of living if they move to West Virginia. Or you can enjoy a high standard of living in the good old US of A. So, like, why not? Why move?
If your I guess if your take on this, sorry, if the dimension that you're coming from here is trying to convince whites why this is not in their best interest, sorry, not whites, the white nationalist racist type. If your play here is to try to convince me why this is no good for me, that's not really a strong argument. You need to kind of explain why this would be bad for you and the rest of America, because you're not going to convince us that, oh, we really want to live in a multiracial society. The only thing you can really say is why this would be bad for you and for America, and that's why you don't want us to do this.
The argument would be we would invade.
Why would lefties not want white nationalists to separate?
So again, the argument would be, I don't need to make a moral argument, because pragmatically, if we're talking about the wishes of the non-white ethno-nationalist population of the U.S., you would be militarily buried within 12 hours.
Hey, that's fine. If I can just get you to agree, or not get you, sorry, if you're happy to agree that there is no moral argument against a white ethnostate, that is a victory for me.
Oh, wait, no, sorry, we don't even need to go there. I mean, if you want to talk moral arguments,
if you concede and pivot away from this, you've lost this part of the debate.
That's okay. So calm down there, bucko. We haven't even gotten to the debate. So the moral argument would be that I don't think it's okay to say that a person can't live in a neighborhood or country because of their race. That would be my argument.
Sorry, do you mind just repeating that again? I missed the very first part of that, which is integral.
Yeah, I don't think that it's moral to say a person can't live in a neighborhood or a country because of their race.
Right, got you. So you don't necessarily have a problem with whites leaving and forming their own state. Your moral objection would then be for whites to prevent non-whites from coming in based on a racial basis.
That is correct. I mean, if you
Okay,
wanted
see now
America, you can already
that's
move
how
to
I
a
would
white
like this
neighborhood.
debate to kind of move forward, but I feel like you're trying to get at something else every time I bring up a point. And I'm very willing to just say, okay, I got you on that. We can move forward. But if you're going to be like, no, 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 like I'm not even going to give you an answer on the moral aspect of it.
No, I
I'm
was
just
just
going to
pointing out
sidetrack,
that
and then
I was just
eventually now
pointing
we
out
get
that
to where I was trying to
if
go.
it came to like this actually happening, nobody on my end of the aisle would need to make a moral argument. We would make a military one. If you want a moral argument, as though this idea is to be taken seriously, then yeah, I would say it's unethical to prevent a person from living somewhere because of their race.
Right. And again, not to beat a dead horse, but I did say multiple times I'm interested in your thought, your feeling, why you personally would object to this. And I may not have said, give me the moral argument, but I thought it was quite clear that that's what I was getting
Well,
at.
I think it's also immoral for us to give you West Virginia to begin with. So we've already ceded territory here, literally. But yeah, I mean, so with that being aside, I don't even know why you all would want to live there. I mean,
Again, every time you go to say something specifically about West Virginia, these words need to be implanted in your brain. Don't anchor me down on West Virginia.
That's why I tried to give you an island off the
that.
Pacific, because that way we wouldn't have to initially concede some secessionary argument from the U.S.
Well, I mean, if it's something that is established, like, you know, a portion of Hawaii where there's some sort of like infrastructure to work with, we're not going to just be, you know, cavemen for a few
what if it's Atlantis?
For a few decades or something.
What if you
like
raise
that? Like,
Atlantis? It has advanced Atlantean infrastructure that you can live on.
Come on, Vaush.
What? We're already in fantasy land. I'm just trying to leave out the secessionary argument because we're not giving you West Virginia or any other state. I am still curious why you'd want to move there at all. Like, if you want to live in a white neighborhood, you can. There are tons of ethnically homogenous neighborhoods across America.
Well, because I'm not just an individualist. Like I you know, if I was, I would just do me and my family, and that would be good for me. But I think like you and a lot of other people, just living for yourself isn't enough. The well-being of whatever it is you care about, it tends to be the driving narrative in your life. So I could argue to some people, you know, why do you care about, you know, this weird animal in some country I've never heard of going extinct? Well, because for whatever reason, they grew passionate about the information they came across and extended their soul and their brain to something beyond their little sphere. And that's what I've done as well. You know, I've experienced anti-whiteism. I've experienced the brutalness of living in a multicultural society in an urban area. But the driving force behind my political activism is not my personal well-being. It's fighting against the thought that in X amount of years, whites are going to go extinct. And we perhaps, and again, this is imaginative. Okay, cut me off.
Well, maybe it would be easier then if we took this from the other side. Let's say I'm the Grand Poobah of the United States, and you're trying to convince me that I should cede some of my territory for the purposes of you producing a white ethnostate. I feel because that's the fundamental moral argument, right? I'd be arguing on the U.S.'s side why we shouldn't give you that territory, and you would be arguing the opposite. So if that's the case, what argument would you make to me? Like, what moral claim do you have to a racially homogenous territory?
The moral claim, I guess, you know, it's there's so much overlapping with societal, cultural, moral claim. I think it would benefit the people of America to have some separation, have some breathing room, and to come to some sort of resolve within our lifetime with respect to racial tension and polarized politics. And I think if there was a place to go for pro-whites to exist comfortably out of people's hair, I think that would truthfully benefit both sides. So that would be kind of like my moral argument. If you want to stop me there.
Well, how would it benefit us? How do I benefit from this?
Okay, there's going to be less right-wing voters in the voting demographics in the electoral. So right away, you know, you're going to be better situated to win elections for the left. I know you're not like necessarily a Biden supporter, but you do view a Democratic win over a Republican win as a push in the right direction. So I think as you get rid of us, the fascists, there will be more support for communism. I think when we look at the youth, it is being polarized in terms of like communist fascist and the old paradigm of liberal versus conservative or capitalist, like that's kind of dying. And I think we're going to either see a fight, or we need to remove these two sides and give them some breathing room.
Sure.
And
I mean,
as you know, a nice guy white nationalist, I favor secession over civil war and eternal fighting.
if we're talking pragmatics, though, then the easiest thing that I could do is grant you territory in the heartland of America, starve you out with a blockade, deny you airspace in the surrounding area, wait for you all to starve, retake my territory, and now I have 1 million less fascists in my country. If we're talking pragmatics, the easiest thing that I could do would not be to your benefit. You're asking to be left alone, which is not something that I'd be willing to do purely because it benefits my voting demographics. So if you're making that argument, like, in what, like, why do you deserve this? Like, what's so wrong with living in America?
Well, that's just one aspect. It's not just the voting demographics. It's also, okay, you no longer have to worry about rampant racism in society because, again, the white nationalists are going to be leaving. And again, this is in theory. We could argue, well, how do you know how many white nationalists? I'm just saying, for theory's sake, if we were to leave, get out of your hair, X, Y, and Z would be changed. These would be the benefits to you. Your culture would improve. The school systems would improve. You wouldn't have so much what you feel is oppression against blacks because all the oppressors would be leaving. I mean, I don't really feel I need to say too much more to make this point clear as to how this would benefit you and the left. And virtually, I got to admit, the overwhelming majority of society views me, if not who I am in real life, but if they were to just see my political endeavors, they would view me as an absolute monster, and they would not want me in their community. And that's what initially started getting me thinking, is like, if these guys just want to push Nazis out of their community, then logically, there's only two things. You're either trying to kill us, or you should be happy with us just going somewhere else.
Well, ideally out of the country, but say we're giving secessionary territory. So why do you want this? I mean, what's the argument to your favor? Because all the arguments you're making so far is that you and your people are odious and a detriment to society, and we'd be better off without you, which I generally agree with. But I mean, we're still ceding territory. I need to know, like, what are you getting out of this?
Well, obviously, the strategy in my argument there, right? Like, if I want something and I feel it's also in the other person's best interest, I'm going to make an argument that makes it seem appealing to them, not just simply say, "Hey, blacks commit more crime; they have a lower IQ, and these goddamn Hispanics are taking all their jobs." Like, that's,
But
you've heard that a
believe
million
that.
times. It's not interesting. I believe there's truth to pretty much everything I just said there, yeah, but I wouldn't just leave it at that. Like, there's nuance within it. I think, in all honesty, Vaush, the average immigrant here in Canada is just a hardworking dude who's trying to get ahead and create a good life for his family. He's not coming to Canada trying to replace the white man, nothing like that. He's just, again, doing what our country will allow him to do and what makes sense for him. I hate the game. I don't hate the player. I don't judge individuals based on their race. If I see a black person, I'll think, oh, he's probably pretty stupid and is likely to rob me. No. If I see an Asian person, I'll just assume he's really smart and good at math. But I'm aware of group differences. So I will avoid certain areas, like certain black areas, because I've literally been targeted as a white person. I've literally had black gangsters explain to me, why target a black dude who's likely to defend himself and doesn't have much on him when I can target a white guy or an Asian guy who has more on him and isn't going to fight back? And if that's not race realism on a social level, I don't know what the fuck is.
Wait, how is that race realism? Isn't that completely environmental?
It's acknowledging that race is real. You can predict that based on racial features that a white guy will act a certain way, an Asian guy will act a certain way, and a black guy will act a certain way. And these black gangsters have literally explained to me why they target whites and Asian. If you want race realism to mean what you want it to mean, you can go ahead and do that. But race realism to me
race realism seems to mean like anything. So wait,
no, you can derive truth in reality from understanding race, dude.
How much money you have is cultural. The amount of money you have on you is a product of socioeconomic factors.
Oh wow!
Wait, do you
wait? If a person is willing to target you based on race, that is race realism.
Wait,
end of story.
Wait, stop, wait. Hold on.
Say whatever you want.
Do you think that we grow money like from folds in our?
Yes, Vaush. That's what I think.
Wait, okay, so we have money, and the amount of money we have.
Stop. Wait, hold on. Stop. Wait. So Vaush, you don't think there's any distinguishable features between either groups of people, you would laugh. You'd be like, no, Ronnie, I've told you a million times there are distinguishable features between it. Don't ask me questions that you know the answer to. We
What?
both know it's childish. It's
So
stupid.
wait, again, race realism isn't when one racial group has more money than another racial group. By race realist, do you mean like you know black people have darker
Dude, that's not even
skin?
anywhere close to what I said.
Is that race
I said
realism?
people will target people based on race, and the reasoning for targeting them, there turns out to be truth in it. Asians and whites don't fight back as much as blacks, and they don't have as much
Why
money.
do you think
so
that
by
is?
looking at somebody's race, you can come to certain conclusions and predictions. Whether or not
Wait,
you want to
that's
say
not
this
okay. Wait,
fits-
again, you don't
But
know what
that's not race
you don't know
realism,
what
Ronnie. That's not race
evolution
realism.
means. And you don't know what race
It
realism
is.
means. Wait,
It's not a
I
social
can inform you.
construct.
Wait,
It's
I can make a
reality.
better white nationalist than you. Race realism doesn't mean when there are differences between racial groups. Race realism means when there are inherent
You
differences.
realize it's a very complicated nuance. So it's like asking, what does football
Everyone
mean?
knows that there are
I
differences
couldn't
between
answer
racial
you
groups.
in one sentence
You're
what
doing this
football
again.
means, Vaush.
The
No, because
existence of
you're doing this.
profiling
You're
doesn't
trying to
mean race
overcomplicate
realism
something
is
that's
true.
very simple. It's very simple. If you can make observations and predictions and experiments that
I feel
holds
like we're
the
having
belief
two
that race
separate
is true,
conversations.
it's real. There's utility in understanding this. Then I don't know what else to say. Like that is race realism.
Okay. So to you,
You can define it as
race
something else,
realism,
but that's not how people define race
race
realism. That's not how
realism is
people
when
look
there
at
are any differences between racial groups,
Pardon
whether they're
me?
inherent or socially constructed.
it. There are both.
Okay.
There are two. Like I could argue that there are social and biological reasons for why Asians don't fight back as much as blacks. Literally biological and social reasons.
Wait,
Vaush.
do you
It's
have
not
any
just
evidence
black or
of there
white,
being a
it's nuanced.
biological difference? Is there a paper you can cite me?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, just look up skeletal differences between the races, height differences between East Asians and Europeans or blacks, the width of the shoulders, the length of the limbs. For instance, Asians have very large torsos in comparison
Are you
to their
Asian?
limbs. No, I'm white.
Why have you spent? Wait, we're not talking about skeletal
Yeah, because
structure.
right now I'm subverting your expectations that I'm going to be this black and white Nazi that just says everything that you've already heard before, and I'm bringing different arguments to the table which
Wait,
you're not prepared for.
We know that East Asian people tend to be shorter than Europeans and people in America, and anyone who's
And
ever
blacks.
taken a bus in Los
I'm
Angeles
elaborating on it
knows.
to show that it's not just some sort of social construct, and we can derive utility from it.
Wait,
That
so
is
you
my
don't,
definition
so you
of how
don't
something
have,
is
so
real in
this,
science.
so you're not talking
that's
about
how
like a
scientists look at things.
propensity.
It's like, okay, if
Wait,
we can
hold
make
on. I just need to mute you. I'm sorry. So I'll wait for you to finish and then I'll continue. Okay. All right. We good? Wait, are we good? Wait, please tell me we're good. Are we good? Tell me we're good, brother.
Can I talk?
Well, no,
Okay,
wait,
this
I need
is-
to talk because you're
I
every
love
time you
that I'm
talk,
able to
you
get
run
you
off
like
in a
this, man.
mile, and you like it's the wildest shit.
It's a good look on you, man.
So I'm just trying because otherwise we'll be here for hours. There were two other topics that you mentioned in the email, and oh my god, okay.
I watched you debate the
when
previous Canadian Nazi.
you're doing
and
it
you
again.
guys
You're
spent
doing it
so
again.
much time on a single point that was like nothing. It meant nothing. And
But
both of
that's
you
what
knew it,
we're
but you're happy
doing.
to do it because you're winning at that point.
No,
But you
that's
love
what
to
we're
pivot
doing
when
right
you're not
now.
doing so well.
We can't even move past what race realism means. You think race realism means any differences, inherent, social, perceived, real, actual? So I don't even know what we were talking about. Weren't we talking about
I
white
wish you could just
ethnostates?
listen to what you just even said right there. You're saying that race realism is that there's actual differences, there's measurable.
Wow, can you actually list the adjectives that I used? Because I don't think you heard me. You just tried to repeat what I said, but you didn't say the things that I said.
Not verbatim, Vaush, not verbatim. No,
Well,
I
yeah,
mean,
but it wasn't just verbatim. You
This is
changed the
hilarious.
meaning
I
of my
love
statement.
that you're willing to make it this petty and small, man.
You changed the
What
meaning
is
of my
the point
statement.
that you
No,
want to
but I
move
think
on
it's
to, or what
it's
is the
indicative
main
of the
thing?
broader conversation we're having.
Because I know
where
you
you're-
don't want to do this.
I know it's indicative of the broader conversation that
Nobody
we're
even wants
having.
to hear
Wait,
that, right?
unironically, you need to stop interrupting. Like, you need to chill, okay? Or we'll just end it because you talk over everything I say. I think it's indicative of the broader conversation because you just said that I don't listen to you, but then you attempted to repeat what I said, but change the meaning of what I said. So I don't think you're actually listening to what I say. I think you feel threatened. I think you're out in the savannah right now, okay? You hear the rustling of bushes behind you. You don't know if it's a predator, okay? You're very jumpy, and you don't actually want to listen. So let's just leave this aside. I don't even know if we're still talking about the white nationalism thing, or are we? Uh-oh, did he leave?
You just
Oh.
ended on a really weird note because you didn't really know what the point was you're trying to make there. I'll
No,
let
I
you
don't. I
continue
have
if
no
you
idea
want.
where I'm completely lost. So help me out. Are we on the white
Yes.
nationalism thing?
Kind of, sort of, yes.
So your argument
You're
is that we should let you
insisting
go
that my
because you people
definition of
suck.
race realism is incorrect. And I'm willing to move on and say, listen, you have a different, more strict or just different version of what race realism is. I'm perfectly happy to just leave that there.
Okay,
You know,
that's fine. So
I
your
don't have
argument
to
for
beat the
white
dead horse.
nationalism is that you think we should let you go because you all suck. So, like, it's to our benefit that you go.
That is actually a part of the argument. Yes, I could explain to you why it's beneficial for us, but I think it's a better strategy to try to convince the person why it's best for them.
Okay, sure.
You're
You know
trying
what?
to
Sure.
sell
I'll
something to
take that.
somebody.
Okay.
You can't just be. Okay, cut me off again. What are you gonna say?
No, you win. Okay, if that's the broader argument, then I'm willing to accept those premises. I mean,
Yeah, because it's really hard to argue against. Like I've never met a leftist who's been able to defeat me on that, working from that axiom. If this is actually beneficial for both of us,
it's not actually.
How can I really argue against you?
So just so you know, it's not actually beneficial. The idea of normalizing territory being seceded to ethnostates just because the people who want to live there is odious would be ridiculous. Also, we wouldn't allow you to keep that infrastructure. Sorry, the property within West Virginia.
You just said though that based on that, I have to agree with you or something along those lines. And then you just said, wait, no.
So the reason why is because we were already
I'm
relying
pretty
on a bunch of
Chad,
ridiculous
did he not just say, yeah, based on that, I'll agree with you?
Yeah,
if
then
you're
I'm
saying
so
that
I'm
because
trying
you're
to
so
elaborate.
shit.
Hold, please. So the property within West Virginia is government property. The people within West Virginia are American citizens. So you're not getting to take those. We're not getting the land either. All of this is based on a series of preconceptions that I wouldn't necessarily agree to. But if you could convince me, as the poobah of America, to give up a state, its infrastructure, and its people, and all that being laid out, I still don't think it's moral for you to disallow people from moving to this new country that you have created because of their racial group. But I mean, but at this point, we're so many layers removed, like I would just invade anyway. I don't know. That's why I kept trying to bring up the Atlantean.
Let's not move, because you made a really good point there, Vaush. And you made this point earlier, and in fact, I actually addressed it, but I just want you to know that I am addressing this point. You're saying, okay, wait, hold on. We cannot concede any land. I find it morally egregious to have a section of the United States separated and to not allow minorities in. No. We simply cannot allow this to happen. Now, the counter argument to that would be, if we somehow were to win an election in that state, meaning that we got into a governor, over 50% of the population wants this, then would, based on, that, I guess, that democratic principle, would you not say that it would be morally right for that state to secede if the majority of the people there want it?
Nope. That state's
what if it was a
property.
super majority? What if it was 90%? What if the government
100%.
did
that state's
some
part
calculations?
Of the union.
What if the government said this is an economic drain, and the only reason why a person would want to hold on to this is for egoic type of reasons that extend towards the nation, i.e. nationalism, which I know you're not. If the government could look at a state and say it's a net drain, we're literally paying for this state to keep it afloat, and they want to leave, and they want to take the white nationalists with them.
The only argument that you could make in that case would be one where I believe that secession for that state would not only be more democratically representative for the people who live there, but it would also free them from oppression, a la like Kurds in Iraq, for example. In those cases, I would be in favor of secessionary action. But given the fact that the people in the fine state of West Virginia and white people at large are not facing any oppression they're trying to escape from, I wouldn't lend any credence to that argument.
Well, I would say that we shouldn't be the dictator of who is oppressed. If a group of people are saying we're oppressed, we're not seeking vengeance. We want separation. I find it very hard to believe that they would just be making this up.
No,
and I would like to believe
having met white people, yeah, they make up the oppression all the time. Yeah. Having met white people, trust me, they do the victim police
Well,
thing quite a bit.
I do believe that it's logical to assume that somebody could be making up oppression if they're trying to seek penalties or vengeance. You know, I want this guy to go to jail. I want him fired. I want to raise something, anything like that. You know, I can see situations where people make these things up. I want more from the government. But if you're simply just asking to leave, to be left alone, to literally take one of the least desirable pieces of land, because that's still better than living in
Our
New York,
land.
Toronto, or
You're
Chicago.
still taking something from us.
Well, I know you're not this like national. You don't really care so much about the size of the land or anything like that. If 98% of the people want to leave and it's the land isn't really resourceful, or again, it's an economic drain. It's filled with people you don't even want to associate with. They're always going to vote Republican. I don't see why you wouldn't want to allow this to happen, as opposed to eternally fighting with these people forever on the internet. But then something else clicked in my head.
We're winning
And
every generation.
I want to highlight this point just before I pass it to you. And if you want to comment on that or anything I said previous, it's up to you. But I realized, you know what? The majority of white nationalists and communists, whether it's somebody like you or Richard Spencer, they actually don't want a solution. They wouldn't want something like this because they lose their enemy and therefore they lose their job. It's kind of like how a cop doesn't, you know, he wouldn't think this way, but I mean, if there was no crime, a cop wouldn't have a job. So if there is no white nationalists, if there are no fascists, Vaush becomes irrelevant. If there is no communists, if whites have their white ethnostate, Richard Spencer becomes irrelevant. And I realized, you know what? It's it's actually in your best interest as a businessman to have the eternal enemy in which you can always fight.
Very wise. So, first of all, considering the fact that I cover issues going on in other countries, and I also argue with liberals domestically, I feel like I'd be doing just fine either way. Second of all, no. Whether or not it provides tax benefits to the government, West Virginia is property of the government. That land belongs to the government. And furthermore, as far as I'm concerned, by way of being born into this country, every American citizen has a right to travel its lands, including whatever territory you would want to have ceded for your white nationalist vacation spa party. I would never be in favor of any secessionary activity based on people wanting to form an ethnostate. Not even for an oppressed group. Like, you, even if you had a real claim to oppression, no. Because I don't like ethnostates. Why? Why black people should be able to move into your house? Into your bathroom?
Well, here, I've done my best to stay away from the Canada thing, like you suggested. However, I'm a Canadian. I do care more about, say, white Canadians than white Americans. Like I should. I believe white Americans should care more about white Americans. And I've looked at the Canadian landscape, and I believe Prince Edward Island is the best place that we need to move to secede. It gives us our best chance, our best option. Now, we have historic precedents for secession, for separation. If you look back to the 1994 Quebec referendum, they were 10,000 votes away from leaving the Greater Canada. Now,
as an ethnostate?
Oh, as a French Quebec nationalist state, which is, you know, kind of like Israel. Is it an ethnostate? Is it a Jewish nationalist state? Whatever. It's clearly for the identity of this group in which they wish to preserve.
That wouldn't have been an ethnostate.
No, before I just need to finish this point before you go in, because all of these details really matter. Quebec is the second most populated state or province in Canada. It has a huge population, cultural significance, economic significance. It's plastered right in the middle of Canada, and because the people voted 55 to 45 that they wanted to vote to leave the country, the Canadian government said, yes, it's our moral obligation to allow these people to have that vote. Now, that would mean that Quebec would essentially be isolated as a Quebec nation, and they are very fascist in terms of implementing their pro-French policies. It's quite remarkable, actually. And, you know, I don't blame them because they want to preserve their French identity. So they were 10,000 votes away from leaving Canada. And here I am just arguing for little tiny old Prince Edward Island to leave, and I'm expecting to get way more than just 55% of the support. I think as white nationalism grows and we can actually focus our efforts towards migrating our people towards a certain area, not just white flighting towards random areas, again, staying in your hair, I realize, hey, it's in all of our best interest to focus our efforts towards a common goal and make both sides happy. And, you know, as a non-French Canadian, if the Frenchies want out and they want their own country, fuck them, let them have it. Like, why, you know, it's kind of this funny thing that we're in this eternal argument of like, no, you should like us. You should like us. We're the right ones. we're never gonna get anywhere. We're gonna be fighting for fucking decades.
Okay, so I can't speak to Canadian legal precedent. I don't know what that had to do with any of my responses. I still don't think it's ethical to form an ethnostate.
Well, what I'm arguing is that when I believe that there's precedent, I believe, like, I said I can't only talk about America, but Canada found it morally acceptable because because one of the provinces, the majority of them wanted the option to potentially leave, and that vote settled a lot.
First of all,
okay, again, it's not necessarily an ethnostate.
The fact that another country wants to do a thing
that I could provide, which is
extremely
similar, Vaush,
that another country,
and there's other points to it.
The fact that another country wants to do a thing isn't an argument. I would be like, hey, I don't like it when you behead gay people, and you'd be like, in Saudi Arabia, I could go over there and I could behead gay people. Like, okay, still don't think it's right. Second of all, no, what Quebec wanted was not an ethnostate. They were looking for sovereignty from the state of Canada. Which I have my own problems with that movement, but it was not an ethno-state. Not to say I'm a fan of French Canadians, mind you. I think they were despicable.
Would you say that? Would you say that? Okay, I know what the counter argument would be, because you say that they wouldn't just limit it to ethnically
the argument
French
is that ethno-states are bad. Why should people of a given race not be allowed within the borders of whatever nation you want to form? Why not?
Oh, I get that, and I'm not pretending that my previous argument addresses this particular point, but it's going back to what I was talking about of whether or not democracy should rule within a democratic nation. And yes, maybe it's
doesn't
not an
mean
American
you can do anything and everything. You can't
No,
democratically. It's not moral to democratically
our
decide to genocide a population. So ethnostates are moral.
And that's a huge straw man, because nobody is suggesting that.
No, what I'm saying is that the fact that you arrive at a conclusion democratically doesn't mean that it's moral. So I don't think ethnostates
I never said that it
moral.
was. I'm saying in this specific case, which is very, very close related to what I'm talking about, we have a much larger province with more people.
What does this have to do with the argument that I'm making?
I am trying to explain, but you keep cutting me off before I'm at the final point, which will then provide some sort of clarity or will illuminate something different to you. I am not saying to you, Vaush, that this destroys your moral argument or any of that. What I'm saying is that this bolsters my claim that if a state or province wishes to secede, and the majority of that state or province which wishes to secede, they should be allowed to. And governments, specifically Canada, have allowed this. And with Texas specifically, there is that chance. With California, there are those talks, even though it hasn't happened. It's at least on the table, so to say, of discussion, unlike raising Atlantis in the middle of the ocean.
Just because a country does a thing doesn't mean it's right or wrong to do that thing. I don't know why you're trying to bridge the Izot gap.
Do you at least now see the point that I'm making?
Wait, if your point was that secessions happen sometimes, then I never disagreed with that. My argument is that I don't want it here in America, and that ethnostates are immoral. You keep this has nothing to do with.
No, what I'm trying to argue here is that
the
democratic will of a state should matter. It's not the Trump winning argument. It's not the only thing that I have. But
not for ethnostates.
It's like, when a lawyer provides historical precedence for his case, Vaush,
not for ethnostates.
That's what it's like. That's exactly what it's like.
Not for ethnostates. This is a very close
you
thing, can't democrat your way into an ethnostate.
They often will.
He's actually not going to answer, is he?
Perfect, dude.
Wait, I need you to actually address. Hold on,
but you're.
My concern is that ethnostates are immoral. Now we can talk about that, but you keep going off on these insane tangents about, well, what about Quebec? That's kind of an ethnostate. Well, there are countries that have democratically decided to secede. That has nothing to do with what we're talking about.
If I just made that point and you said, okay, that's an interesting case, but that doesn't mean that ethnostates are morally sound.
I said that. Do you listen to what I'm saying? I said that multiple times.
But that isn't the only. You kept going on about how my point serves no place within the conversation. So, and that is the part that we are currently bickering about, Vaush, which I don't even know if you understand that that's what we're doing.
Do you want to discuss why I think ethnostates are just immoral, regardless of whether or not there are precedents for them or they're arrived at democratically?
Sure, yeah, why not?
I don't know why the fuck we're talking about Quebec. Okay, why should you have...
See, you throw that little comment, I don't know why we're talking about Quebec. Do I have to explain to you again why we're talking about Quebec? Do I?
Do you what?
Do I need to explain to you one more time why I brought up Quebec?
No, you don't. You don't. I'm sorry, sir.
Okay,
don't remind me, okay? Please,
continue.
please.
No. I'll mute myself and you can continue. I'm glad that your audience could see that little display from you. That little poke at the end with the Quebec thing.
Okay.
Jesus Christ.
Okay. Ethnostates are bad. That's my argument. Continue.
Really? That's your argument? Ethnostates are bad.
We can talk. I mean, do you want to defeat her to that? We can talk about the specifics on that if you want. But yeah, I
Okay,
think
I'll
that it's
explain to you why
wrong.
ethnostates are good. It satisfies both parties in terms of the pro-white or anti-white community. I don't want to get too tied down in labels and how we describe those two things. Satisfies both parties. Both parties get what they want. White people are left alone. You guys get the evil boogeyman, white nationalists out of your hair. This is
We're
going
not
to
talking about what
affect the
I
voting
want. We're
block for you
talking
in a
about
positive
ethnostates in
way.
general. So why should it be okay
Are you really going to say what I just said has
to
nothing to do
racially
with ethnostates in
discriminate?
general? Is that really what you're trying to say, Vaush?
So
What I
why
was
should it
just
be
talking about has
okay to
nothing to do with
racially
ethnostates in
discriminate?
general?
Chill. Why should it
I
be
never said it's
okay
okay.
to racially discriminate against people with regards to their ability to live in a given neighborhood or country?
Well, we do it all the time.
That's not an answer to my question. Why?
Okay, well, what if I said that it's a natural human inclination based on survival mechanisms?
Okay, so that was a
Want me
lot
to
of
continue to
buzzwords
expand
for
and expand and expand?
an argument I've heard many times, which is because tribalism exists, therefore racism
Yeah,
is
you're bringing up
natural.
these like elementary points, which like
Which you can't
it's
even
just
answer.
embarrassing.
You can't even respond to the simple ones. I feel
I
like I'm
just
pulling
answered
teeth.
to it, and I'm asking you, like, okay, like, how much of an in-depth answer do you want to this very obvious thing? It's like me asking you, why is communism good, Vosh? Like, you just kind of
Wait,
look at me
I
like,
could
really?
answer that. Wait, I wouldn't like freak out and start diving into a bunch of subtopics.
And I
If a
did
person
answer it,
asked,
and then I'm like, does that satisfy you? Do you want me to continue?
no, you
It's not like
answered.
I'm
Wait,
avoiding
so
the
a
question.
reminder, you answered
You want
and
me to
you
keep
said
answering
because
you
it's a
why
natural
ethnostates are
product of
good?
biological impulses for survival. And then I pointed out that you're about to make the same mistake every dumb fuck Nazi I talk to makes. You're going to say
Oh,
that
I'm a
because
dumb fuck Nazi. We're
tribalism
ad
exists,
hominems. That's a clear indication that you're doing well in a debate, by the way.
because you think that tribalism exists, therefore racism is natural. And then you follow that up with the implied normative argument that because racism is natural, which you haven't demonstrated, by the way, that it's okay to legislate based on racism. And then you would have to make the additional normative argument that not only is legislating based on racism acceptable, but that you could do so to the extent to completely preclude a person from entering a country. But you just kind of smugly left the first part out there as though that was a total argument. So racism is not natural. That's my counter argument. I can demonstrate it too. People are more racist the less they interact with other racial groups. People in the inner city, people who live in Seattle, LA, New York, less racist by far than people who live out in white homogenous areas that never come into contact with minorities. Racism is a product of ignorance, my friend, and if you expose people to other kinds of people, everyone realizes, hey, we're all people.
Okay, well, I don't believe I started any of my points off with saying people should be racist and racism is natural. I never even used the word tribalism, but I could see how you would just kind of make that connection. But I'm kind of confused. Like, are, are you saying that I don't genuinely or sincerely want to be in a white ethno state, or are you trying to convince me as to why I shouldn't want it?
No, I'm saying that there's no. You said, why is it okay to racially discriminate for people entering the country? And your answer was because we're relying on the like survival differences that we arrived at naturally, or something like that. So I'm pointing out that no, that has nothing to do with racism. So I've
Well,
provided a defeater, or at least a counter argument to your position.
there's so many reasons as to why people would want to live in a homogenous area, right? Like I could
This
talk
isn't. Wait,
about.
that's not the point we're making. The point was that you made a point and I made a counterpoint. So do you make a counterpoint, or
I don't,
do
and
you
I don't want to
see?
pivot away from it. I'm not trying to do that. Like
Okay.
I'm
So then
going
we
to
dropped
anchor
the
down
initial
on
point
that
you
point.
had, which was the natural survival instinct thing. So next argument then. Why is it okay
No,
to keep
I'm not dropping that. I never said that I was. I even said that I don't want to pivot away from it, and I never said that I was conceding to it. I just simply said that it's that in conjunction with many other things, just for that point of clarification. Um, I mean, that shouldn't be too hard to understand, right?
I love you. I hope you know that. You know that, right?
Well, you say that to all of your Nazi guests, and you also call them my white brother, trying to get some sort of connection in with them.
Well, what I'm mostly
Earlier, I
doing
said
is
something to you
making
like
fun of
that's
them.
very wise, and you seem very sincere in that. There's been a couple times where You do these kind of things that I've noticed. But anyways,
Well, yeah, well, it's a
now I
rhetorical
forgot what I
strategy.
was
I'm
trying
trying
to
to
say. You're
remind you.
asking me why is ethnostates? Why do I
No,
think
no, no, wait.
ethnostates
I
are
do
good
no.
for
We
white
can't.
people?
We can't keep
But
doing.
no,
We
I don't
can't keep
want.
meeting like this. We can't
Yeah,
keep doing
take it
this.
whatever direction you want, man. I'm free at this point. Like I'm not tied to any avenue. Take me
No,
down
it's just
whichever
this
road you want, bro.
conversation is agonizing. Do you feel the agony? Do you feel the pain? Is it just me? Am I getting old? How old are you?
I feel like for my end, it's been a quite a success. There's been a lot of things that have gotten you to admit, a lot of things that have gotten you to not argue
What
strongly.
did I was
You've been the
was it a
one to
win
freak
when you
out,
got me
raise
to
your
admit?
voice, call me names. You'll even say things like, "Dude, you got to stop freaking out," and I'm just sitting
Well,
there,
the
and
main
it's
reason I
just
said
you.
that is because you don't stop talking, and when you do, it's rarely about the thing we were last talking about. So I feel I really hate muting people. I wish people could know how much anytime I mute a person, it's because for 3 minutes beforehand, I'm staring at the mute button with like veins bulging out of my forehead. My hand is like shaking as I hold the mouse. I like anytime I do it, but some people talk so incessantly, and every time they talk, it's like a fractal dipshit, like mirage, where I'm looking through a kaleidoscope, millions of fractally bad arguments expanding infinitely in all directions. So sometimes it feels necessary. Was there a point you
Do you
felt
mind
like
if
you
I
got me
respond to
on?
that?
Sure.
Do you mind if I respond to that? Okay. I've watched your debates with Destiny, and I've even watched people who've analyzed and done reviews of your debates. And both of you clearly think the other person is interrupting each other. Virtually all debates, if you ask Stefan Molyneux or Sargon or whoever, they all say, the other person wouldn't let me speak. They just kept talking over me.
That's true.
Even the last debate that you had with another Canadian. So, like, I mean, I wouldn't give a fuck if your audience agreed with you if you think this. This is just what happens. So I try not to get too bogged down in conduct and let me finish and let's argue forever about that. I just want to kind of zip through points and take it from there. But we both end up saying paragraphs, and I feel like I'm focused on the second point in the paragraph. You might be focused on the fourth, and then we don't match up. You want me to go somewhere that I'm not going. I want you to go somewhere you're not going, and this happens all the time in debates.
Oh, that is definitely true. And unless somebody actually goes back and records or parses out information, it's impossible to really know who interrupted more or who spoke more. But I still feel like you might have, my friend. What points did you think you got me on? Was it when I acknowledged that black people have darker skin than white people sometimes, or?
Well, no. See, again, that's another thing. You'll just point to that the most simplest, trivialist, frivolous aspect of race realism, and say, "Oh, what? Just because we have different levels of melanin and whatever, that you think I'm conceding this huge point?" Well, the fact that there's utility in race in terms of understanding society, making predictions, being able to categorize people into different classifications, so that again, there's usefulness in terms
a
of understanding
social
these various groups of people. I feel
process.
like I was quite successful
Wait,
in proving that.
but I want reparations. I would have already agreed with that. We need to know. Wait, anybody who believes in intersectional feminism will recognize that you need to recognize the racial constructs as they exist today in order to know when people are being oppressed. Race blindness actually enables racism because when you can't see colors, you can't see patterns along those colors. So, but I don't know if that's a point you got me to concede on. I already believe that. I just don't believe that you can find any inherent differences between the different racial groups that extend beyond the obvious phenotypical skin color, nose shape, eyelids, that kind of stuff. Like very obvious. Hair density, I guess. Persian guys, they grow mustaches at 15. Very
And yeah,
blessed.
this is actually a point that we should have expanded on more. I don't, for instance, know the difference between a Jack Russell's brain and a Rottweiler. I could not be able to tell you, Vaush,
Humans
the
aren't
genetic
dogs.
components. Which, and okay, don't. This is an example, and it will flesh out my thinking here, my reasoning. Different dogs we know have different levels of intelligence. Jack
Dogs
Russells are
were
smarter.
bred
Let me,
for
Javash.
intelligence.
You said whatever about the
But you're
interrupting,
saying a
right?
dumb thing again. Dogs
That
were
okay, it
bred to
doesn't
have
matter
different
in
levels of
debates. You are
intelligences.
not the dictator of that. If you had a moderator, maybe they could, but you don't.
Wait,
So
I'm the one streaming. I
you don't
kind of
just
am the
get to.
dictator of that, though. But like again,
I've seen
you're doing
multiple
it
people in
again,
your
though.
stream literally suggest you need a moderator, and that will help you out with
This
this.
is
But you don't
this
get
is
to
what I
just say what
mean,
you're
though.
saying is dumb.
The
Shut up.
dog
That
breeds
is
you're
I won't
talking
do that
about
with
were
somebody on one of my
literally
streams, man.
bred to be different levels of intelligence.
And you can make this point when I'm finished making mine.
But then it goes on forever.
For your immature,
no, this is what it's forever.
It
and now
you interrupting makes it go on forever, Vaush.
You'll say a dumb thing, and then I have to respond to that, and then we argue about that for 30 minutes. But then you say another dumb thing. That's what a lot of your channel is when you debate other people. I mean, look at every single one of your debates with the white nationalists. It's all titled like crazy guy, stupid dude, whatever. You want that to happen. So you're being totally disingenuous right now. No, that's not
Even
true.
If I were
like
doing
the
that
arguments.
like an idiot, that would only benefit you anyways.
No,
Vaush.
I like the arguments.
The only reason for you ever to want to dominate or pivot or anything is because you don't like where it is right now. It's the only logical conclusion.
So wait, can you not use dogs as an example? I think it's dissonant.
And you'll just laugh at the camera and you'll do these little things because you know you've already won the debate.
I think I'm about to use another nasty debate trick, by the way. Can you guess which one I'm about to use?
The hang up on the guy you're